You're on the air with Florenza, your podcast destination for authentic conversations with a twist. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and join me on this unique literary journey. Cheers! Kimberly Lemming is a fantasy romance author known for her whimsical and adventurous Mead Mishaps series. Her latest book, I Got Abducted by Aliens and Now I'm Trapped in a Rom-Com, is set to be released February 2025. This new series, Cosmic Chaos, follows the hilarious and heartwarming adventures of a woman who finds herself unexpectedly abducted by aliens and must navigate a quirky romance in an intergalactic setting. Please put your hands together and welcome Kimberly to the show. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining me for this episode of On the Air with Florenza. We were chatting a little bit before we came online, and I am so excited to talk to you about your book and how you came up with all of what is going on between the pages. And before we do, we have to toast to a good show. And so, cheers to you.
Cheers to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, and you've got a glass of red wine, do you?
That I do.
And I've upped my game. Initially, I had just water with lemon, but in honor of this fantastic book, I just added a little bit of vodka to it. So, cheers.
Cheers to that.
So, I want to first start with saying your reviews, the galley reviews, because at the time of our recording, the book is not yet available. So the reviews that have come in were through Galley Reads. And I wrote down just a few of them, and I just want to read these off. These are just some of the one-liners from the reviews. One reader says that it is scorching effing hot. I thought that was great. Another said, a roller coaster of goofiness in the best way. Hilarious, spicy, creative romance. My favorite, balls to the wall, insanity. This one's smutty. I love smut. Okay, I have to admit, that was my favorite. The cover looks so innocent, Kimberly. Just the cover looks like I can give it to a teenager, but I would like be placed
please
in
don't
jail.
give it to teenagers. Please don't do that.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your book, in particularly, how did you come up with such a clever title?
Well, first of all, I started writing back in 2021 after I quit my job and decided just like, you know what? I'm going to be delusional, be a romance writer now. And thankfully, it actually worked out. So we on that end.
Uh-huh.
But with this book, it was kind of like a weird setup because the way I got started doing this is that I was just an indie author that pretty much just wrote my books and popped them up on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. I didn't really think about going trad. I didn't think it would ever be something that, I mean, I mostly write like silly rom-coms. I didn't think they would actually take it seriously. But when the books got popular, my Mead Mishaps series, and you can see the three covers behind me actually, that got picked up by a publisher. And the transition was a little rocky, so I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should just stay indie or maybe I should just go trad. So then I got an idea for like an alien romance book because I was just reading a bunch of them. And then I got into the idea of, well, what if I just made a book so ridiculous
Uh-huh.
that trad publishing would never pick it up and then I could self-publish it. I know they don't normally do alien romance. So here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. And then I put my thinking cap on.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, I was like rereading the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon, who I love. I
Uh-huh.
adore her. And I was also watching Meerkat Manor because I love Animal Planet. And so then I started thinking to myself, what if one of those animal researchers got abducted by aliens while she was on the job? And more than that, what if those aliens were actually also animal researchers and had to pick her up and drop her on this new planet to help repopulate a dying species? And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh, this will be fun. So at first, I was like putting in all this silly stuff I thought no one in traditional publishing would actually take seriously. Like, oh my God, let's add dinosaurs because maybe
Uh-huh.
like, they're underfunded and just like went to a museum to get like a bunch of Earth DNA because they don't know what the hell they're doing. They had like three
Right.
days of research. So let's add dinosaurs. Let's make it a poly romance. Let's add a talking lion because why the hell not? And I just
Why
had
not?
so much fun plotting this kooky, crazy alien romance. And then I was just like, all right, well, obviously I'm known for my long titles. Like that time I got drunk and saved the demons. Let's call it I got abducted by aliens and now I'm trapped in a rom-com. But I think
Uh-huh.
originally it was I got abducted by aliens and now I'm gonna make it everyone else's problem. And so I sent it to my agent and she's just like, this is hilarious. Let me send it off. And sure enough, Berkeley wanted it. And I'm like, what? So I was like, all right, great, let's do this.
Did you first question like what's wrong with Berkeley because your thought is like, or did you feel like had I known they would actually pick it up, I should have thrown some more in there?
I really could not think of another thing to toss in this thing. It was pretty much everything but the kitchen sink. Because I'm just like, you know what? This is for me. This is a book for me. I'm gonna add whatever makes me laugh. And now there
Uh-huh.
is also Steamboat Willie. So that's a thing now. But yeah, at first, before Berkeley even wanted it, it got the attention of a few other publishers, and they were thinking about bringing it to a bidding war. And I'm like, are you serious? For Polly Aliens with Pink Down? Okay, let's go. Let's go. And so, yeah, it all just worked out in the end. I was really grateful.
Nice, 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 nice. Now, when you were telling others, like your family or your friends, about what you were putting together before you pitched it, what were some of the comments? Were they just like, all right, Kim, seriously?
You beautiful chaos demon was usually the response. They're just like, I think they're going to actually pick it up. I think that would be really funny. If it's you, I think they trust you. I'm like, no, 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 it'll be great. It'll be so goofy. I'll just self-publish. It'll be a good time. So
Uh-huh.
they saw the writing on the wall before I did.
Uh-huh. Wonderful. Now, when I was reading through, of course, when you're thinking about Toto and Dory, the first thing that comes to mind is the Wizard of Oz or the Wiz. And those things kind of initially pop in your head when you start, and then it quickly is so not that. So tell us a little bit about Dory and her quest, not only for her PhD, but just in life in general.
hmm Well, when I first started creating Dory, I really wanted to name her after a famous either black mathematician or just a famous black woman that had anything to do with NASA. And so I don't know if you've seen the movie Hidden Figures, but I thought about
Yes.
Dorothy Van Gann, and I'm like, oh, that'd
Uh-huh.
be perfect. So I named her after that. But of course, with a name like Dorothy, I could not stop thinking of Wizard of Oz.
Uh-huh.
And before I even named her, I wanted her intro to be, well, she's an animal researcher who gets attacked by a lion. What if the lion was just named Toto and rolled with it?
Yes.
So then
Why not?
why not? We're having fun. So then I started to see like the parallels of she gets sucked into this spooky, crazy world, kind of like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. But in the end, she doesn't actually go home. So what steps do we have to take where she's actually like, you know what? I actually want to live on this planet. Earth
Uh-huh.
sucks. I'm with my two hot alien husbands now. We're good. Cheers to all.
Cheers to all. And we're going to get to that steamy part, or as my favorite word is, that smutty part. Now, how did you come up with the concept of it being this poly situation taking place and of introducing more love interest? Were you just bored and said, why not? Which I think we're going to be seeing a lot of why not during this interview.
Well, the way I was going about it, I honestly started writing the adventure before I started writing the love story because Dorothy is so far the smartest character I've ever written. She's an actual scientist. She was like this close to getting her PhD. And it was mostly just an excuse for me to nerd out about animals because if I could have any job in the world, it would be a wildlife biologist. I love nature. I love learning about everything of that nature, obviously. So when I dropped her off on this alien planet, I was basically having her freak out about like all of the flora and fauna that it did not match. She knows for a fact that it didn't do a lot of research, and she herself has done a lot of these like animal release things for her own job. So she's just seething inside.
Right.
And so as I'm going through this, it's just like, it would be really hard for like just Soul to get this deranged scientist to stay on track and like survive in an area full of dinosaurs that want to kill her. So I think we may need a partner in crime here. And then I came up with Locke, her second alien husband. I'm just like, you know what? This is a poly now. Because I kind of love all three characters and they
Uh-huh.
bounced off each other so well. It's just like, you know what? Let's go.
Which was your favorite to create outside of Dory? Because she seems to be your your alter ego in some ways. Which of the characters were your favorite or was your favorite to create?
Toto the lion,
Mm.
100%. He cracks me up. He's actually based off my corgi Bandicoot, who is just like this short little guy, but thinks he's just king of the world at all times. And all he wants to do is conquer every other yard around us. And I have to reel him in constantly.
Now, if your corgi could talk, what would he say? Would he say that you got him spot on in total, or would he kind of give you some hints of how to create a different character for it?
Oh, he would say it's spot on. I think he would especially be happy that I gave him a saber-toothed tiger for a wife because back when we used to go to dog parks before COVID, he would always just fall in love with whoever was the biggest pit bull at the park. If there was a large and in charge lady, he was all up in it. He's just like, "Hello, marry me. I love you."
That is awesome. Now, tell us about Intern and how Intern fits into the whole story.
So intern is the basically Bubonian intern that was sent to go retrieve Dorothy. Because in the beginning of the story, a little bit of a spoiler, but Dorothy basically wakes up too early on the spaceship and button mashes her way to freedom with an escape pod. So the intern is sent to go get her, but by that time, she's already found Locke and Soul. And so they're all having a conversation, well, fighting really. And then the intern thinks to himself, he's like calling back to headquarters, like, hey, she's already made contact with some Senkato. Should we just see how this works out? So he gets to go ahead. He shoots all three of them with the love dart, which basically makes human women susceptible to the Senkato pheromones. And she ends up mated to both, which they didn't really plan. They thought like, oh, it was like a fated mate one and done situation. It was like, oh, she actually responded to both. Let's see how this goes.
Uh-huh.
And so his task, instead of just retrieving Dory, his task becomes getting the three of them to fall in love and stay together to see if this program can actually work. So th behind the scenes, he's setting up all these scenarios of like only one bed or like making sure they stay together and doing
Uh-huh.
whatever he needs to do to make that romance move forward. And all three of them are in on it and can't stand him half the time. It's just like, would you go away? Okay, we're trying to have a conversation. He's like, okay, but like, can we just like, I just need notes of how this is. Get away from us.
Your one-liners and your quips and your sense of humor is off the charts.
Oh, thank
Were
you.
you always like that as a child growing up? Were you that one that put you in a room by yourself and the parent or teacher comes back and you've named dust particles and are having fun? Like, what type of child were you to where this is who you are creatively?
Yeah, I was the weird kid playing by herself and naming all the dust bunnies. I actually had this dust bunny named Milton at the daycare, and if I could not find Milton, all hell would break loose. And so apparently I was not picky on what dust bunny it was. Like they'd go into like the arts and crafts things and just get those colorful little balls that the kids play with. It's like,
Yes.
oh, kid, we found Milton. And I was just like, oh, he's purple today. That's cool. And asked no questions. But my whole family's kind of like that. We're always like quipping at each other. We're very sarcastic. We're always joking. And so, yeah, it just shows up in my characters because I don't know how to be serious more than 5 minutes. I really can't do it.
That's awesome. Now, there's a part of the book, and if this is a story, if this is a spoiler, we will cut it out. If it remains, I am excited. Tell us about the process of Dory naming things and how did you come about that?
So, she ends up naming the planet Waffles, mostly because, oh gosh, why did I even begin to name the planet Waffles? It was an argument on Twitter of basically like, well, you can't put all this stuff in an alien romance. And I'm like, well, watch me. And you know what? Just for an extra kick in the teeth, I'm gonna name the planet Waffles. And so I decided to have like a whole scene where they're like pressuring her to come up with a name for the planet. And because she's eating breakfast, she's like, I don't know, waffles. And then sure enough, I'm just like, you know what? What if we just like kept on this vein? So I actually opened it up to my Patreon of just like, hey, what kind of names do you want for this planet? We have like breakfast theme, we have this over here. And sure enough, everyone on my Patreon is just like, oh my God, breakfast theme. Name the beach like Benedict eggs or something. And so like, okay, cool, we're gonna do that. And so we just went with the whole breakfast theme.
Wonderful. Were there any characters, I mean, with the chaotic group that's present, were there any characters that didn't make it to the final cut?
No, I don't think so.
So everybody that you conceived of dropped right in the story somewhere.
Right? Yeah. Well, I should say that the women in the biodome didn't make it in, but they will probably make an appearance in the second book because about 20 women in total were captured with Dory, and I was gonna have a scene where they actually make it to the biodome and like chit chat and all that. But there
Mhm.
was so much stuff going on with the book. I'm like, you know what? This is for later in the series. So they're still chilling in the dome over there.
How excited are you with this series, and how many books do you see this becoming? Do you have like a point moving forward that you're like, okay, after this many books, we're just going to be done? Or do you see this taking on a life beyond what you could have even imagined?
I guess it really just depends on the response to it. I'm in the middle of writing the second book right now, and after that, it can be open-ended if Berkeley wants to buy more books in this series. But if not, I'm happy with just the two. But we do have like 17 other women still ready to go, so we'll see.
Nice. What would you say to an author who may be feeling confined with genres and tropes and feeling that it's cutting off their creativity? What would you say to them in terms of how you were able to utilize the aspect of truly having fun in your creativity and how it led you to such a successful project?
Well, I suppose the one thing I can say is that I never expected my books to do well, so I had nothing holding me back. It's just like I'm making
Mm.
these for me and my friends to laugh, and if somebody else laughs, great. So don't hold yourself beholden to what's out there if you're not feeling it. Just don't do it.
I love that. I love that. Now, where are the listeners able to connect with you and get some interesting backstory and all things Kimberly?
Oh, where can they now, or have they before?
Oh, can they now?
Oh, yeah. So I'm pretty active on Instagram and TikTok, and I also have a Discord attached to my Patreon where they can come and just ask me questions directly if they want. Sometimes we'll just like giggle whatever books we're reading, and I'll beg them to read that time, Someone You Can Build a Nest In, because it's been my favorite book of the year. So that's always been a good time.
We've come to the part of my show that I have renamed One for the Road. It's a series of this or that questions that's designed to let the reader learn more about you as a person. But in lieu of that, I would be so honored if you would please read an excerpt from your book.
Absolutely. Let me pull that up real quick. All right. So in this scene, they're basically fighting because Dorothy wants to figure out why this giant American bullfrog grew to the size of a cow. And so she knows that if she kisses someone, she can basically give them the ability to speak English. And so they're fighting with her, like, get away from it. It's gonna eat you, whatever. And then the frog ends up just like shooting its tongue out and smacking one of her husbands in the face. And so then, as they're like laughing at him as he's going to wash off his face, they hear, "Fly!" bellowed a voice. The frog's tongue shot out and caught a microraptor flying overhead. Poor thing never stood a chance. Oh, well, that answers that. In seconds, the frog's meal was no more than a few blue feathers trapped around its mouth. It croaked. In a long, confused sounding bellow, it shouted, "Answers that?" It tilted its head before blinking rapidly, then fixed its eyes on me and asked, "Fly?" Keeping my voice soothing, I answered, "Nobody, not a fly." The frog shuddered at my words, then leaned back and watched the sky. "Not fly." "Nope." Its eyes darted to me again, then away. "I, not fly." The frog blinked rapidly again. A look of shock crossed its face. I can think? The frog fell very still, then just started screaming and didn't stop. I pulled out my phone and added a note not to grant sentience to any other animals. The end.
Nice. Thank you so much for that. One of the questions that I didn't get a chance to go to, and I do want to piggyback, is some of the early readers were saying that they would have wanted to learn more about Locke. Is it Locke?
Mhm.
Will there be more of him in the future books, or what are the readers able to expect? Not just about him, but also with Saul.
Definitely. Their stories are going to come back into play deeper on into the series. This one was mostly like a setup of the world itself, but once we're able to delve further into the characters, you'll see more of the backstory of like their empires, their tribes, where they come from, because there is going to be a lot of upcoming conflict.
Good. Now, will we still have a lot of that out in the open sex scenes asking for a friend?
Of course, why not?
Why not? Thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining me. This has been so much fun. I look forward to having you to come back when part two is released.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. And this wraps up another episode of On the Air with Florenza. You may follow me on all social media platforms under Florenza Lee or via my website at florenza.org. Until next time.